Hello, welcome everybody. It's the Thursday Financial Thing live stream with me, of course, as always. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you being here. If you are watching in the future, thank you for watching too. We have a great guest for you this evening. I'm going to be talking to Susie, I'll try not to butcher her name, Newworth, who is the founder of the magazine P2P Finance News, which you know I use and read. I am actually a subscriber to. If you've never checked it out, go check it out. I have lots of really good news stories about P2P lending. Very unique. You're not going to find this type of content anywhere else. So Susie and her team have got a real good understanding of what's going on, not only in P2P, but some of the other financial aspects of the world. So go check it out. P2PFinanceNews.co.uk. Before we get to that, I have to shout out to Cufflink, our sponsor of the stream, and of course the sponsor of the Harley Cam. Right there, she is snoozing, but Cufflink, you can earn up to 9.73% gross per annum and over £250 million of property-backed UK investments made since 2016. Zero investor losses to date. Your capital is at risk. Don't invest unless you're prepared to lose money. You can sign up if you don't have an account, which I know a lot of you that watch the stream do, but go to join.cufflink.com/financial-thing. And yeah, support our sponsor. They're doing good stuff over at Cufflink, I believe. Not financial advice, of course. And UK, but I may stream from over there. I don't know yet. It's kind of up in the air, but at least we have. Yes, if you can hit that thumbs up, please. We appreciate it. Hi to everybody in the stream. I'm not going to do too much shout outs today because we want to get Susie on here. We can kind of keep it down to a decent amount of time, but yeah, hi to everybody. Really appreciate you being here. Hit that thumbs up. Show your support. And no sound. Why do you not have sound? Oh. Okay. Hang on a second. Let's try see what's going on here. No sound every time you put a slide up. Oh. Maybe. Hang on. How about now? Do you have sound now? So let me know that there's sound. Sound is muted whenever the slide is showing. Okay. I don't know why that's happening, but okay. It's probably we're not going to use the screen sharing today anyway. So, let me try. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll just repeat what I've said very quickly. Thank you. There's always some technical issue, isn't there? Okay. Yeah, I had it muted for some reason. But yes, here is the live stream guest. We have next week Cufflink, May 11th. Hiram Patel, who is the head of risk of Cufflink, is going to explain everything about risk to us and how that works at Cufflink. It's going to be really informative. Definitely put that on your calendars. May 18th, Steve of Capital Stackers. May 25th, Peter Reed with Assets Exchange. And then June, kind of be a little bit up in the air because I'm coming over to the UK and I may live stream from over in the UK. I may even live stream live from one of the locations that I go visit. Maybe it's a peer-to-peer lending company. You might get a impromptu stream, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. So put next week in your diary again. See, was it? No. Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Susie on. Let me just grab her right now. Hold on, bear with me. Okay. And let's bring up Susie. Let's make sure all the audio is working. Hello, Susie.
Hello.
I wanted to make sure I didn't butcher your name. Is it Newworth?
Yes, that's correct. Very well done, actually. You've definitely done better with it than a lot of people do. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was reading it and my brain was going, how do you exactly say this? But it sounds like a Scottish name. Yeah. Is that a Scottish name?
It's German. So it'd be Neu in German, but we say newer.
Completely got that one wrong. Anyway, first of all, listen, thank you for agreeing to come on and share your knowledge of the peer-to-peer lending world. We are big fans of that side of our little niche investing world. So thank you, first of all. How are things? You're in London, right?
Yep, I'm based in London.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is London today? Is it nice and sunny?
It's a bit mixed. It's getting better than it was for sure. And I think the atmosphere is going to be quite good this weekend because we've got the coronation. So lots of excitement.
Oh, is that something to do with Coronation Street?
No, it's coronation of our king, King Charles.
It was a bad joke, you know. Wow, the big coronation. Are you going to go watch? Did you get to go watch this live in person, or is it something you just sit and watch on TV?
I mean, I'll probably watch it on TV, to be honest. I don't know if I can bother with the crowds, but I might pop into a street party on the weekend as well, which would be nice. So.
Ooh, okay, go grab a few pints at the old local nuclear sub, as they say in London, right? Anyway, we're going to talk about peer-to-peer finance and use a little bit of background on you. Have a chat about peer-to-peer lending in general. As you know, we're big fans. So, in most cases, not when companies fail and stuff like that, but usually we are fans. So yeah, tell me about you. You founded Peer-to-Peer Finance News. How long ago did you find it?
So I founded the publication in September 2016, so about 6.5 years ago, I think.
Okay.
So my background, I'm a business journalist. So I started my career working for some trade publications, and then I moved into newspapers. And it was while I was working for a newspaper and I was writing about peer-to-peer lending and how fast-growing an industry it was. So I thought to myself, wow, this area is actually really underreported. And around the same time, I was considering starting my own venture, and I suppose it sort of came along at the right time, and I felt there was an opportunity there.
So you look relatively young. I'm just going to put it out there to somebody to. What did you do? You just quit your job and then said, "I'm going to try to do my own thing." Is that what happened? You said.
I went freelance to give myself some more flexibility to do it. So I was freelance, but I was doing newspaper shifts. But because I could sort of pick and choose which days I wanted to do, it meant that I could use time in between that to sort of do some market research, start meeting and speaking with peer-to-peer lending companies, finding out more about the industry and planning for the business. So it sort of worked out quite nicely in that sense because I sort of started slowly tapering off the freelance work as I got more into the business, but it wasn't like I sort of having to go cold turkey straight away.
So when you were working for your job, you were assigned the task of following peer-to-peer lending. Was that something that was given to you and you just kind of discovered more about the industry, or did you know about it prior to that?
I definitely didn't know about it prior to that, to be honest. It was one of a number of topics I covered. I mean, sort of within my career as a business journalist, I've covered pretty much everything, to be honest. So it wasn't sort of the only thing I was focused on, but I did write about it. And yeah, that's completely how I discovered it. I think with peer-to-peer lending, it's such a good investment opportunity. But I mean, even now, I think, probably most people in the public aren't too aware of it. So it definitely took me actually reporting on it, specifically to really get aware of the sector.
Okay, and so tell me about this. What did you do? Launch the Peer-to-Peer Finance News on the side? You were doing the freelancing. What was the journey for you? You just put up a website? Was that something you were familiar and technically knowing how to do, or how did you go through that?
No, I mean, it was a real baptism of fire, to be honest. So the only area I felt confident in was the editorial side. I've really just had to hit the ground running my whole career with journalism. I was editing a magazine when I was in my early 20s. I've always just had to get on with it, whether it's, going to conferences in the Middle East where people don't even speak English and having to get news stories or, whatever, go to press conferences in the US. I've always had to just get on with it. So that side of it was fine. I've got a good friend of mine who's also a journalist called Catherine, who also helped me launch the magazine. So she supported the editorial. Things like the tech side, sales, running a business, I just had to sort of learn on the job, really. Luckily, I think I had a couple of contacts. Well, I had one contact in particular who still sort of helps me to this day, who did lots of SEO stuff at one of the newspapers I worked at. So he sort of gave me some ins on that side. In terms of setting up the website, it got to the point, I did have some contacts, it didn't work out. I eventually just Googled, set web developers and website developers in London and found one, and he set it up for me. So,
Oh, okay.
but we launched the first week was crazy, actually. So Catherine stayed with me, and I feel like looking back on it, we barely slept. We were just, before you've got the processes in place, it's so hectic, and we were just writing news and setting up the newsletters and, obviously making sure that everything is running okay and preparing for the first print magazine, because we've got a monthly magazine as well as the online content. So, yeah, it was pretty all systems go.
Wow. And did you have any fears about taking on this task to say, am I going to be able to actually financially make this work? Because obviously the magazine online businesses is quite difficult. It's very competitive. What were your fears about setting this up and going for it?
Oh, massive fears. That obviously it wouldn't be a success, that I'd be a massive failure, that no one would read it, no one would care about it, everything really. But I think that's probably quite normal for any entrepreneur, to be honest. I think, ultimately I still feel confident in the product. I think it's a really good quality magazine. I'm really happy with it. So, ultimately you just got to keep going. And, the fact is we do obviously have grown our readership. We've got good engagement. So, you've just got to listen to your readers, I suppose, and sort of not let the fears stop you from doing what you want to do.
Yeah, one of the things I find challenging, Susie, about peer-to-peer lending, I do a once a week live stream, and I cover some of the topics that you cover in your magazine too. I'm a subscriber myself to your magazine, so I've been a subscriber for a while. Sometimes I find there's just not that much news within the peer-to-peer lending world, since especially things have contracted. And I also find sometimes that the news is a little bit on the negative side because of everything that's happened. Do you find there's enough content for you to cover within our sector where you don't have an issue knowing what to write about and post?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I will agree with you in the sense that it's not the kind of sector where companies are all producing press releases constantly and, new blog posts, etc. So, we do obviously source some of our news directly from what the company's producing, but I think we've always been proactive. We've also always got exclusive news. Everything goes into our print magazine on a monthly basis, all exclusive. So there's definitely news out there, but, we have to make the effort to actually, search it out, because, pretty much whenever we speak to a CEO in the sector, they'll have stuff to tell us. And they'll be doing things. It's just they're not announcing it. So it's just a bit more sort of groundwork on our end. But I mean, I think conversely that there's something quite nice about that, because I used to cover energy for a newspaper. And if you're writing about companies like BP and Shell, it's so hard to get any sort of exclusive, because obviously they're large listed companies. Bloomberg and Reuters have probably got there before you've even woken up. So to actually have a sector where you can actually have that access to the executives and get exclusives can be quite satisfying as a journalist. So I definitely think there's news out there. It's just you probably have to work a bit harder for it, I'd say, than perhaps some other sectors.
Yeah, and you're right. It is, one of the nice things that you mentioned, these people are approachable in most cases. There's some companies within peer-to-peer that I've had a difficult time getting access to, but for the most part, everybody's been accessible and has been really willing to share information, because they know they're in a small niche sector of finance and they want to deliver information about their product to people out there. So I do totally agree with you. Let's talk about peer-to-peer lending. So before you didn't really know much about it. Before you launched Peer-to-Peer Finance News, did you invest in peer-to-peer lending yourself? Had you had any experience on the investment side as a lender?
No, I hadn't. I think, as I said, so I only really got to know the industry through reporting on it, and then I sort of started prepare to launch the magazine. So I never really had a time when I was purely an investor in the space. I think since I have started the magazine, I've been reticent to invest. I don't know in the US if you're familiar with Piers Morgan, and when he was editing a newspaper in the UK, and essentially got accused of front-running stocks because there were share tips in the newspaper, and he turned out to be investing in them. I'm very, very aware of maintaining my impartiality, and ultimately, Peer-to-Peer Finance News is an independent publication. We write about all the companies in the sector, good and bad, when news comes up. And I think because the way the industry is, because it is quite niche, even with that, we will get accused of, you're just in the platform's pockets, or, you're being, you should be reporting on that or not on this. So I would hate someone to then accuse me of, having written about a company a certain way because I've got a financial interest.
Yeah. Oh gosh, now I'm starting to think about whether I should have ever invested after you.
That's just me. I mean, maybe other people wouldn't say that. It's just because
that's right.
I think people can be quite sensitive about it, and I think while I would never tell my staff they couldn't, I think as the editor-in-chief and the founder, I'd hate someone to be able to go, oh, that's why they wrote a nice article about cuffling, because it's simply not the case.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So if you didn't have Peer-to-Peer Finance News, would you invest in peer-to-peer lending?
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good investment product, and I think one of the things I really like about it is that it's an asset class where you can actually, it's completely separate from the stock market. And I think when you think about everyday investors, most of the investments they make will be equities, and this is a really great debt opportunity, which sort of high net worth and sophisticated investors have obviously been benefiting from for a long time, and I think it's such a good way to diversify a portfolio. So yeah, 100%.
Okay, and do you on the investment side, do you buy things like equities? Is that something you are interested in, or are you a savings account type person? What do you do? What do you do for yourself?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, most of my money's been tied up in this business for the last few years, so I wish I had loads of excess money to invest. I mean, I've got, like a stocks and shares ISA and that kind of thing, but it's just a sort of legacy, bit of sort of inheritance that I had for a long time, and some cash savings. So yeah, I mean, I think if I generate some more income to put into investments, definitely I'd love to, but at the moment, it's pretty focused on this.
I actually, I don't think you're on the wrong track, though, because I always say to people that if you have a way to invest in yourself, that might be a better way of doing it than putting your money into the hands that you have zero control in. And as we see crazy things happening in the economies, I'm based in the US at the moment, but we see it in the UK, we see it in the US. Things are just looking very turbulent. You're like this little dinghy on this stormy ocean sea. And who better to have your faith and control in than yourself, right, in your own business? So
yeah, it's true. Yeah,
I think that, but I also think diversifying is good too, just in case, that things don't always work out with yourself. You have sort of your eggs not into all one basket. So
yeah.
But as you get a little more experienced and older, you'll probably have some more disposable income to do that. So my next question for you is going to be, did you invest in any of the failed platforms? But because you didn't invest in anything peer-to-peer, we don't have to ask you about that. Let me ask you though about the failed platforms, because you obviously report on these things. You get to put out these wonderful stories about the administrations and kind of what's going on with that. Do you remember when the first company failed? We won't put any names out there because they're in court right now. What did you think about how this was going to affect the peer-to-peer lending sector in general when we saw that first failure?
Well, it was obviously worrying. I think anything which spooks investors, can potentially impact the wider industry is of course a concern. So definitely. And I think the other issue is that I think with the failures, it's obviously heavily influenced how the mainstream media report on the sector. Because I think it's quite hard to find an article now where they won't reference high-profile collapse or scandals that shook the sector and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's definitely been a concern. And I think people who know more about the sector and understand the sector, they get that these are company-specific issues rather than being, a sort of widespread P2P problem. But equally, I feel like you'd have to have a certain level of knowledge to understand that. So yeah, I think it's definitely been an issue. Perhaps less now because it's been a bit longer since that sort of high-profile collapse. But yeah, definitely at the beginning, a bit concerning.
So if the mainstream media is the way that most people find out about peer-to-peer lending, how do we reach those people without putting such a negative picture in front of them? So, obviously it'd be better if they could come to sources like your website and my website first, but let's be honest, your general public tends to find out about things through the media. So how do we get them to the sector without being painted with that negative picture from the general media?
To be honest, so I think actually, I'd best to put this. So, I mean, personally, I think I should play a part in that myself. We are registered on Google News. We do try to produce more and more guides and resources now for, people who perhaps don't know as much about the sector who stumble on the site. So I think that's important. But I also think that the industry could do more to promote itself and the product, because when you actually delve into the returns and default rates and things like that, it's great, but it takes a lot of digging on, the behalf of my journalists to find that. And the amount of times we find really good news on the sector and we think, why is no one promoting this? Why aren't they saying this? And I really think the industry could do more in terms of PRing themselves, essentially. I think that would really go a long way.
Mm-hmm. And transparency too. I'm always begging them, just be more transparent, be as transparent as you can. But sometimes that falls on deaf ears. So what year did you actually launch the first article on your guys' website, P2P Finance News?
September 2016.
Were you nail biting that first article? Did you check it 100 times and make sure it was perfect? How did that go?
Oh yeah, 100%. It was such a crazy week, and it's funny how life always happens the way you're not expecting it to be. So just because of a couple of delays with things, I moved into my property on the exact same week that I was starting the business. So it was just absolutely mad. Nothing was in place. But obviously, starting to get the news up on the website. Luckily, obviously, first day, it's not like you're really, harassed with loads of people contacting you and too many visitors. So it probably does give you a bit of time to sort of finesse it and work out if there are any teething problems. But as I said, to be honest, on the editorial side, that's always been kind of it's been a bit smoother just because that's my expertise and that's my background. And as I said, I had the support of a good trusted friend and colleague. So, yeah. So,
what do you think generally what are your just personal views on the peer-to-peer lending sector now, where we stand? I think from my perspective, I think the worst is behind us when it comes to these company failures. I'm hoping that there isn't going to be more bad apples in the barrel. You never know. There's no guarantees. But I think the worst of it is behind us. And I think with the FCA clamping down, financial conduct authorities become more stringent on the rules, and they're just making it more difficult on especially new entries. But what do you think of the general market right now in peer-to-peer lending?
I think it's consolidated a lot, and I think that's definitely for the best. I agree with you. I think the worst behind us. The industry's, it's far more strictly regulated now. I think the market players that are left are so much stronger and better, and there's some really great platforms out there. So, from my point of view, it's a way better place than it has been before. I think regulation is obviously the sort of key overarching topic for the industry, and obviously, when I speak to the industry, some people are quite negative about it and so it's gone too far. But I think from an investor perspective, or actually any customer perspective, I think it's got to be a good thing that it has got that level of regulation you'd expect from a fully FCA authorized firm now. So yeah, I'm definitely feeling positive about where the industry is, and it'll be interesting to see, now that the regulatory environment has settled, what sort of innovations they can bring out next. So,
do you think that the FCA did a good job as far as regulating the sector in general, or did they make some mistakes and realized, oh, we messed up, we need to be better?
I think it's such a tricky one, because I have spoken to a lot of people and who think, the FCA didn't really quite understand the sector and how to regulate it, which, probably is an element of truth there. I think there are so many issues within the FCA which, aren't specifically just impacting P2P, like the fact, they have so much turnover within staff, so you're constantly having to get new people up to speed with the industry. They've obviously had a whole period of turmoil and change under their new leader. So there's lots of factors at play here. And also, I think the other thing is, everyone, it's not like a magic wand, So even if the FCA sets out a load of regulations, unless they're literally banging on the doors of every single office for every platform on a weekly basis, it's quite hard to have that level of scrutiny where they're constantly, checking up on them and protecting consumers from harm at any point. So, in terms of the supervision, I think it's also about being realistic about what's achievable, not just in P2P, but generally, which is probably when it then comes down to investors to do some of their own research as well. Do I think the FCA has done a good job? I'm sort of split, because I think on one hand, it's really good that they've introduced stricter regulations for the sector. I think there's obviously a big communication issue with the industry about it. We wrote a feature in one of our recent issues of the magazine about regulation, and it's actually quite staggering when I speak to certain CEOs about the regulation and how there's sometimes a lack of understanding about what the rules actually say. I've had a CEO who we sent us a quote, and he actually doesn't seem to be aware of what the risk warning is they now have to put on their website. He actually thought it was something different to what it is. We've got other companies who think they're not allowed to market their products at all now, which simply isn't true. We've got lawyers on the record saying that. So I think there's definitely a big disconnect, which shows that there obviously is an issue with the FCA and how it's implemented the rules, in my perspective. But equally, I think they were right to introduce stricter regulations generally. So,
do you know how many people work for the FCA? I was always curious about that. Do you have any idea? Is that a lot or a small amount?
It's quite a lot, I think. Yeah, it should be hundreds. Yeah.
How many?
Yeah. It'll be hundreds. I'm not sure it's thousands.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was going to say maybe they just don't have enough people to keep up on things. But if there's hundreds of them and it's the government, the way the government spends, they should be plenty. They should have plenty of money. Even though it's not technically government funded, is it? So, but wow, hundreds. I had no idea. I just imagined it'd be like 3 people sitting in the office, with typing away on their computers and reading legal books, but obviously not. No,
but I think, so does Google actually. Yeah, there are approximately 1,205 at the end of 2021. So,
oh, wow.
And 1,339 at the end of 2022. So, yeah.
That is a lot of people. And that's all paid for by the financial companies, right? As far as I understand, don't they fund that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's from what I understand. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you think the sector's in a better place now than it's probably been for the last couple of years. I wanted to ask you, we're not going to name any names of companies, but there has been cases where companies have changed their terms and conditions quite suddenly and thrown that onto investors and said, this is the way things are now. And there isn't much that investors can do about it. Yes, they could take them to court, start suing them. But if Uncle Bob has £50 invested in a loan or £500 here, he's not going to go do that. What do you think about these companies that are changing their terms? Maybe it's interest rates, maybe it's fees or other things like that, putting it on to investors. What's your view on that?
I mean, I think sort of tying into what we were saying before about platform collapses, I think anything which spooks investors is really bad for the industry. So, if platforms are, changing their terms and it's, obviously angering their user base, and that's not great for anyone. I I mean, again, as you say, it's a tricky one how to approach it if you are an investor. And I think with the new consumer duty, which the final deadline is end of July, I believe, which really puts an onus on regulated firms to put, consumer, experience right at the heart of what they do. I'm hopeful that, there will be better transparency and communication about any changes, which should be helpful.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest complaints that I get from certainly people that tune in and watch this is we're just upset that they change things like that. But I have to explain, sometimes they're doing it because they don't necessarily want to do it. It could be to do with keeping the company on the right side financially. Maybe the fees have to go up. I don't know. We never really know exactly what's going on in the background. I think this goes back again to transparency. Some of the problems with the lack of transparency, we don't really know the reasons always why they do what they do. Sometimes it's for the positive and sometimes it's just maybe for the company's personal gain. I don't know. Oh, and I've just been told that there's 4,052 full-time equivalent employees at the FCA.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, somebody said 4,000 and somebody else said 4,052. That's a lot of people. I mean, if we say they're averaging making 40 grand a year, that's like, what, 16 mil? If I get the math correct, maybe it's more than that. It's a lot of money anyways.
Yeah.
A lot of money in wages.
Yeah, but then to be fair, because they did take on consumer credit from the Office of Fair Trading in 2014, so, suddenly it was a whole new load of firms which they had to start regulating en masse. So I suppose they've had more to busy themselves with.
And
actually, we had an FCA speaker at one of our events, and she said it was a bit like whack-a-mole, because she said every time you sort something out, something new comes up. So you think you've got something regulated, then crypto comes up, and it's always something new. And they always talk about that balance between encouraging innovation but also protecting consumers. And I suppose with new fledgling industries, it's always going to be a bit of a challenge, and so we'll have that work cut out. So.
Yeah, very true. One thing I wanted to ask you too about the FCA, I've heard a lot of complaints that the FCA is grouping peer-to-peer lending in with cryptocurrency as far as risk. You mentioned to me you're not really somebody that follows crypto that much. I'm a pretty avid follower of it, and I understand the risk of crypto. Definitely 99% of it is extremely high risk. The other 1% I don't think is as high risk as maybe people realize. Why do you think that the FCA is grouping peer-to-peer lending in with cryptocurrency? Because personally I don't think that's very fair. They're two very different products. Why do you think they do that?
Yeah, well, I completely agree with you. It's not fair. It probably does come down to a bit of the lack of understanding, to be honest. I completely agree. I don't think they are in any way similar on the risk spectrum. And to be fair, I think the FCA has listened to some extent about feedback from the industry on this. So the recent rules on high-risk investments and financial promotions, specifically after feedback from the industry, the peer-to-peer lending platforms now have a bespoke risk warning, which isn't the same as other high-risk investment products. So their warning says, be prepared that you could lose money, not that you could lose all of your money, because the industry put forward a good case and said, well, no, a lot of these investments, they're, secured on things like property. To say that you could lose all your money simply isn't accurate. And so to be fair, the FCA did listen to that, and hence why the industry's got this bespoke warning. So I think a lot of it probably is just about, increasing that dialogue, giving regular feedback to the regulator, really.
Maybe they should have put a warning that said you could lose most of your money, because there's been a couple of cases of money that I've put in that most of it has just evaporated. So yeah, there's always that argument that, there has been cases where we may lose 95% of everything that we put in, which is kind of almost as bad as crypto, right? So there is that argument.
Yeah, but again, that probably goes back again to, looking at which platforms you're investing in. And even within the peer-to-peer lending space, there'll be, a variety of, products on the risk spectrum there. So again, even, it's been sort of argued that peer-to-peer lending itself isn't even an asset class because, can you compare, a property development loan against an unsecured consumer loan or, a small business loan? They're all quite different animals. So it's actually quite hard to even generalize across all the investments, really.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just tuning in, this is Susie from the founder of P2P Finance News based in London. We're just having a general chat about peer-to-peer lending. I wanted to pick her brain because I think her brain is actually full of knowledge when it comes to the sector that we cover every week here, and on the Financial Thing website. Let me ask you about the company failures. So the number one question that I get asked is, Lawrence, how do I pick a reputable company to invest through when I've read all of this bad information and bad news about the failed companies? What advice would you throw out there for people who are new looking to get into the sector? How do they find those reputable peer-to-peer companies?
So first, I would say I think there is a bit of a challenge there because it is actually quite hard to find resources on the sector. I think I would recommend definitely that it's worth doing your own research. Obviously, start with P2P Finance News. If you subscribe and use our search bar, you can look up companies. We've even written guides on how to do your own research into finding reputable platforms. So you can type something like that into the search bar and find the articles. There's also sites like Fourth Way in the UK, which is a sort of independent research and ratings site as well. I think it really comes down to things like looking at the company pages. Are you comfortable with the management team? Do they have the right experience? If their company is all property lending, have they actually worked in the property market? Do they have that background? Also look on Companies House. You can do lots of digging there and make sure that they're up to date with their accounts and not at risk of getting struck off and that sort of thing. There's also the P2P Independent Forum, which has a wealth of information about companies. It's all investors who've got opinions on the platform, so it's worth having a look. So those are probably the key things, and actually also reaching out to the platforms. I think if you're a reputable peer-to-peer lending platform, you should be accessible to your customers. For example, Narinder, the CEO of Cufflink, he speaks to his investors. He's happy to talk to them. He said to me. So, that the platform should be accessible. I mean, not necessarily saying you should be able to, speed dial the CEO anytime you want, but there should be someone you can speak to if you've got questions and you've got concerns. I think that's really important for investor confidence.
Yeah, and also check out the videos that we have here on the channel because we do the interviews, of course, with these CEOs. Yeah. So you missed your opportunity. That's okay. I had to throw a little bit of self-promotion.
No, definitely, yeah, 100%.
So I think we do something here that most is you really can't find anywhere else. So I think that's cool that we get to ask the CEOs questions and find out about them. But great advice. I keep an eye on the chat. Sometimes people have questions. Somebody wanted to ask, is P2P Finance News subscription-based? And did it used to be free? How much is it for a subscription?
So P2P Finance News did used to be free, and we moved onto the subscription model. So it's what's called a metered paywall, so you can read a few articles before it kicks in. We are currently doing a trial offer, so it's just £1 for 3 months. So I think there's no excuse for not signing up.
I agree. And I've been a subscriber for a while, and even if I didn't do this, I would be a subscriber because I think you guys put out so much good information. And listen, people, things cost money, businesses cost money to run. I used to be one of these guys that was so cheap, I didn't want to pay for anything, and now I'm completely the opposite. I know what goes into running a business. You have a lot of expenses. You have people to pay, accountants, taxes to pay. So paying a few pounds a month for a subscription, and it's on a weekly, you can do it on a weekly, it's nothing, and it's more than worth it. So go sign up. Support.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Support.
Yeah, and I think especially with media, I mean, in an ideal world, we want to be beholden to our readers, which is subscription revenues. It's actually better for everyone involved if they subscribe because that's what supports good quality journalism. It means we can invest in the business, and then it means you really are beholden to your readers. So I think most publications are going that way. I mean, if you look at a lot of more mainstream publications like the Times, New York Times, things like that, it's all about subscriptions now. That's what they're pushing because if you can get those sort of revenues up, then it really creates a good dynamic with your audience, I think.
Yeah, and you can also sign up for the email and get yourself. I think that's free, right? You get a
newsletters are all free. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You can read the newsletters, and we put the digital version of the monthly magazine on our social media channels and homepage. So have a read of that, read a few articles on the website, get a flavor of it. So we've definitely got resources for people to get started before the paywall kicks in. And as I said, the trial offer, I mean, it's only £1, so even if you're only vaguely curious, it's probably worth giving it a go.
It's less than the price of a double decker, right?
Yep,
chocolate bar. Gosh. Do you think that there's good companies operating in the peer-to-peer space as we speak? And if you don't want to say who, I totally understand. But I always ask people, I ask CEOs who are running the companies, I said, you can't say yourselves because that's not fair, but would you care to share who you think is doing a good job? Somebody, companies that stand out to you.
Yeah, I can name a few names. Just like caveat, I'm not sort of endorsing them as an investment product because obviously this is just my experience of sort of reporting on them and liaising with them as a journalist. But I think Custlink are doing a great job. Folk2Folk as well, I think are brilliant. And Folk2Folk are actually the biggest peer-to-peer lender in the UK now. So they've definitely been sort of happy to take on that mantle, and they're very passionate about the future of the industry. You've got companies like Crowd Property, again, with a really experienced property team behind them. So there's definitely some great opportunities out there.
Yes, and I don't know if you saw, but last week we actually had Gary and Roy from Folk2Folk on here live. So if you get a chance to go watch the interview with them, it was really, really good. A lot of good information there. And anybody out there, go watch it too if you didn't see it last week. So go check that out. So tell me about, you started to follow the crypto space a little bit. I see occasionally some articles come out. Who is doing that on your end? Is that you writing about it? Do you have somebody else that kind of covers that?
It's only journalists who are working that day, really. So I'll cover it a little bit. Anyone who I employ, really, depending when the news comes out. I think, as I said, it's not a huge area for us. It's just something we've kept an eye on because, if the cryptocurrency is being used as collateral on a peer-to-peer lending platform or something like that. So it doesn't really seem to happen in the UK. It tends to be more US-based or other places overseas. It's something we keep an eye on, but it doesn't make up a sort of core part of our reporting. But obviously, like anything, you want to keep an eye on trends in case they grow. So.
But now, you being younger, though, a lot of younger people are interested in crypto. Why have you not taken more interest in it? Is it something you don't necessarily understand, or you think it's just a crazy type of investment? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I guess I see it as just a bit of a gamble. It's just because it's not really an asset class, is it? It's just a speculative asset. It's not really. I mean, what I mean is it's not really a currency. It's just a bit of a speculative asset where you're essentially just betting on it going up or down. I do think it's a bit gimmicky in the sense that you'll get companies going, oh yes, you can buy a house with crypto or do this with crypto now. But essentially, all people want to do is, no one really wants to hold crypto for a long period of time. They'll want to convert it as soon as possible. Pretty much everyone I know who's bought some sort of crypto has lost a lot of money on crypto. So it's just not something that I'm particularly interested in right now. But having said that, I think each to their own. I think, if people want to invest, and I'm sure some people have made insane amounts of money from it, great. But yeah, it's just not been for me, really.
That's a conversation for another time too.
But you're a big crypto enthusiast?
I would say I am cautiously paying attention to what is going on in the banking world, and I have been for several years. And I think holding some cryptocurrency is a diversification play that, should everything go down the proverbial toilet bowl, it wouldn't be a bad thing to have. Now, caveat, there is thousands of these crappy garbage cryptocurrencies out there that are probably going to be worthless. I personally only subscribe to the big two of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And what really got me into Bitcoin, what I love about it, is I have to send money overseas a lot. And for me, be able to send it over in just a few minutes without having to pay ridiculous fees is hugely useful. And I think
that's a good point.
Yeah, that part of cryptocurrency is going to be utilized with blockchain technology in the banking system, if nothing else, in the future. So, but aside of that, I think it's a good store of value. And yes, people lose money. People buy at the wrong time, sell at the wrong time, just like stocks, right? I mean, we've seen stocks lose 50, 75% of their value. I mean, there's bank failures coming up in the news where the stocks have lost 90% and people have lost, billions of dollars. So I think in any investment, it happens. There is that risk, and as long as you understand more about it and the technical side behind it and why it's actually there, I think it's a very interesting space, and I don't think it's going away. And I don't think it's as much as a gamble as a lot of people think it is and how it's been portrayed, because it's still new, right? But we'll see. Time will tell. We have to have this conversation in 20 years. I'll be an older man. You'll be a little bit older, and then we can look back and say, was I right? I hope I'm right about it, but we'll see. So
yeah, you'll see. When you're sitting on your big pile of crypto cash, you can say you're right.
I don't know about that. I don't. I've been told recently that the thing to sit on is gold, which I've always thought gold was a terrible investment. But due to what's happening in the world, I've been told that gold is going to double in value, and that's where we'll all be saved. But
well, it's a safe haven, isn't it? I suppose with everything going on, I mean, probably worst places to put your money at the moment.
we might need to buy things with a gold coin, Susie. You'd be surprised. It's happened before historically. Yeah. We look at Germany in the 1930s and 40s and what happened to their currency. And I think I read a statistic that every single currency in the world has been devalued terribly. So, if that's the case, gold, there could be a case for gold. Yeah, there we go. Somebody wanted to ask a question on here. Let me see if I can scroll up. A lot of comments today about Cufflink. Oh, how do they get a link to the trial for £1?
So if you go onto the website and you click on the big subscribe button on the homepage, so it's right on the right.
The big red one.
The logo. Yeah, the big red one. Click on subscribe. And then if you scroll down, it says monthly subscription, digital only, 3-month trial.
There it is. Okay, it's peer-to-peer-finance-news.co.uk/subscribe if you want to go check that out. Okay.
And also tying into what I was saying about transparency, if anyone ever wants to contact me, if someone is looking to subscribe, interested in the magazine, feel free to reach out. My contact details are on the website and that's of the team. So always happy to answer questions about our content as well.
Good point. Okay. Let me ask you this, Susie. I'm always extremely interested in people who start businesses. I'm a huge proponent of entrepreneurs. I think working for the man, for most people's cases, is a really bad idea long term, and having just your own future and destiny in your hands is the most important thing we can do. You started a business from scratch. You probably, like me, didn't know much about running a business, because when I got into it, I thought it was just going to be really easy. Just put up a website, and then I figure out we got taxes, we got invoices, all these annoyances. What is some of the challenges that you have faced or are currently facing with your business at Peer-to-Peer Finance News?
Oh, and there's loads. I think like most businesses, I think finding and retaining the right staff is really challenging. I think for me, particularly on the sales side of the business, it was very hard for me to recruit because it just wasn't really my area of expertise. I've actually ended up overseeing the sales to some extent, and I now employ someone else who sort of essentially runs them. But that was definitely a really hard area for me to get my head around. But again, actually I did, and now, while I do still oversee the journalism, I will also, do things on the sales side if I need to, if I need to help oversee things. I think aside from that, I'd say anything which is a challenge for the peer-to-peer lending industry is a challenge for me, because we are obviously such a niche title. So, if the industry is worried about regulation, then I need to be worried about regulation, essentially. I think what else is key challenges? Those are probably the main ones, really. It's really about the staff, and then sort of whatever the industry is worried about. That's really the main things. One thing we are going to start doing is actually expanding more globally. So we're going to be doing a bit of a marketing push in the US and mainland Europe, just because we sort of notice growth from readers in those markets, and which is quite interesting, as we don't really tend to cover those markets as much. So it'll be interesting to see, how that sort of shapes the business in terms of challenges or opportunities going forward this year.
Yeah, that was another question that somebody asked on the chat, is have you had much interest from people looking to find out about the European lending platforms, or have you had interest from the Europeans reading the website?
Yeah, definitely increasing interest. I think probably in line with the growth of the market there and the new sort of EU-wide crowdfunding rules. And actually, so we had, because we've got a relationship with a trade body there, and the guy there, he told me, we simply don't really have a magazine like this in the continent. So, I think that is an opportunity for us. We are definitely seeing, growing numbers reading us from overseas. Interestingly, with the US too, which again, we're still sort of exploring for the moment. But again, I'm not sure if we have a sort of similar magazine in the US which covers the sector. So yeah, I definitely think there's growth there and hence opportunity.
Yeah, in the US, it's still a very a misunderstood sector. We do have a couple of pretty large companies. Obviously, we had Prosper and lending. Oh God, my brain is. Which was the one that was one of the big Lending Club? Yeah, we had Lending Club. But yeah, it's still not a very covered industry over here. But Prosper sort of did get a lot of attention from investors. So I personally did try investing in Prosper for several months, and the results weren't particularly good. I made 3%, I think, over 4.5 years. So about 3% a year. So didn't quite work very well, but a lot of people I know who used it were picking out their own loans, doing a lot of manual lending. I just don't have time to do that. But I like the fact you're trying to make it more global. I think one of the challenges, and I'm sure you agree, is you have to have enough manpower to cover everything, right?
Yeah.
Enough people to write about all these different countries, because you got Australia, you've got Europe, and then the US. That's a lot of companies to cover, right? You agree?
Yeah, but to be honest, I think if you're organized, so as I said, we're just sort of doing our research now in terms of expanding out. I think with mainland Europe, it's probably the easiest market for us to expand into because we were already sort of covering it to some extent, some of the companies. So we've done some research, going to start sort of, widening our coverage there. So yeah, I mean, it's just, as you say, we do need enough manpower, but I think also if you're organized and, checking all the company blogs and on all the right, lists, and then reaching out and doing some regular interviews, that, it should be doable.
Susie, give me one tip about how I can be more organized, because I'm very unorganized. Give me a tip as a business owner.
Oh, one tip. Gosh.
One tip. Come on.
Well, I don't know. It depends what you already do, I guess. I mean, it sounds really lame and obvious, but being really on it with your inbox and how specifically you segment it. Everyone I know who does this just has a far happier life. So I think really, segment it as much as possible. Extra folders.
Keeping it organized.
I think an unwieldy inbox is just a secret to a stressful life.
Do you know I met somebody who had 7 emails in their inbox, and she deletes everything, and I have a really hard time doing that, even though when was the last time you really went and picked out that email from 2017? Probably never happened, but I have this fear that if I delete something, I'm going to need it.
Yeah. How
does your inbox look? Do you have 1,000 emails in there, or do you just really delete everything and move everything into folders that you really need? What's the key?
It's not too bad. It's not amazing. So my other half, he's one of those weird people who has no emails in his inbox because everything is straight away put in a to-do folder or a different folder. If I've got things I want to keep an eye on because I need to deal with it presently, I do tend to leave those hanging around a bit. So, but then a lot of other stuff gets filed. So I tend sort of work in progress. But I think the more organised you can be with it, the better, to be honest.
Okay. All right. Well, look, we've been going almost an hour, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really do appreciate you coming on. Listen, everybody out there, pay attention. Go check out Susie's website, P2P Finance News.co.uk. Just so you know, for full transparency, this is not a paid ad. This is purely something I reached out to Susie and asked her to come on because she's just got a lot of insightful information. I took a gamble, Susie. I didn't know anything about you. I thought, oh God, this could be the worst live stream ever, or it could be the best.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it didn't disappoint.
No, it was great.
Thanks so much for having me on. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, go check out. She has a deal right now on the website. You can sign up go to this big red subscribe button right there. You can see it under the search bar. It's just £1 for 3 months. I mean, come on, that's really good value. So go sign up and support. It's important that we support the sector. Even if you don't support financial, then go support Susie so we can continue to get good news from the
thanks
sector.
for the shout out. Well, you should support both, everyone.
Absolutely, they should be. Some people, they only have a limited amount of resources, so no pressure. But yeah, thank you again, Susie. We really appreciate it and look forward to maybe catching up with you another time in the future and finding out how the magazine is doing. And one other thing, you had an awards. Is that correct? Recently?
In December. Yeah.
Was that your first live award?
It was indeed. Yes, it was very exciting. We were really keen to do it for years, but then the pandemic hit, obviously, so it wasn't the right time. And in 2021, we just didn't feel the appetite was quite back yet. So yeah, last December was our first awards due in the Hurlingham Club in London, and it went really, really well. The team were really chuffed with how well it went, actually. Had a great turnout. The atmosphere was fantastic.
That's super cool.
Definitely we'll be doing it again.
Well,
so
congratulations. That's a no small task, so good job for doing that.
Thank you.
All right, so Susie, thank you again. We will be speaking to you in the future, I'm sure. Good luck with the magazine and the website, and thank you for your time. Very much appreciated,
Susie. Thanks so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
There you have it. That was a different stream this week. I thought I'm always trying to reach out to find interesting guests because let's face it, you don't want to sit and listen to me drivel on all the time every week. So that was why I reached out to Susie. I'm a big fan of the website and I wanted to get her on here. So I hope you appreciated the information. If you did, hit that thumbs up. We'll be back. I'm going to do this without muting this time. Next Tuesday with Hiran Patel, May 11th, Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Cufflink. We'll talk about risk. So the head of risk. If you have questions about Cufflink, bring it on. Bring it on. And I will be going to visit them, I think, when I come to London in June. So, yeah. Anyway, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. May the 4th be with you. Did you get it? It's May 4th. And for any of you Star Wars fans, may the 4th be with you. Thank you for tuning in. From myself and Harley, the very tired miniature dachshund, we bid you good night, and we will see you. I got my buttons all mixed up today, but I'll see you next week on Thursday. All being well. Take care. Bye-bye.